Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Old Hunt, where we are still celebrating 10 years of Bloodborne. We are playing through version 1.00 of the Japanese release, and last time, I wanted to progress a little bit further, but had to stop, do some farming that took a little bit longer than I expected. I also read through some lore descriptions that I think are fairly important, gives us some more clues as to the nature of Bloodborne's world and what might or might not be going on here. And so we did some speculation on that front. And then I made it all the way through sort of the first pair of sections, or the first of two gigantic, like, poison swamps in the Nightmare Frontier. Got to send a Winter Lantern flying with a supercharged attack from my stake driver here. But unfortunately, I was so happy with the result of that stake driver attack that I neglected the fact that the Winter Lantern stayed alive and immediately succumbed to frenzy and died. So, oh well. We'll see about getting our revenge. But before we do that, there is another sort of important lore item that I want to get to in this episode that I've sort of been holding back on. And this is the Great One's wisdom. And the title of this one is interesting, and it ties in, like, also the function ties in visually with something you can already see if you look to, like, all the way on the left hand, the sort of thumbnail images. You've got the Madman's Knowledge here, which has a skull with the light being that looks like a slug of some kind with the two little, I don't know, I guess eye stalks or something, whatever those sensor things are that are sticking up out of its head, right? You've got one of them, right? One of those, like, slug image things. And then down here, you've got the same sort of skull, and you've got the same, maybe in the background, it's the same image. It looks like it might be. Like, the coloration looks like it might be the same. But all around the rest of it, right? You've got a whole number of other of those same, like, arcane light slug things all streaming out of the skull. Right? So just visually, this is telling you that Madman's Knowledge is, like, on one level of mind-blowing, and then the Great One's wisdom is on another level of mind-blowing. And yeah, that's absolutely what's happening here. So let's go through this description, and we'll verify all that and get a little bit more information about what's going on and what the sort of lore setup behind Bloodborne's world is. Get a little bit more concrete information that's sort of helpful. Well, actually, before we get to the description itself, it's worth noting that, sort of like Madman's Knowledge, like, if you remember way back to when I was talking about that in the Old Hunt, I talked about how the kanji that are used to represent knowledge in the Madman's Knowledge are not the regular ones. They're unusual, right? They're more complicated than ordinary. So a Japanese speaker might look at the set of words at the title of this description and see it means knowledge, but not necessarily fully grasp how that reading is supposed to be. And then when they see, like, if they ever look it up and they find out that it's an alternate set of kanji for chie, they'll be like, oh, okay, right, I get it now, right? But there's that sort of immediate level of, I'm not sure what that is, right? I can't remember back to the first time I played this in Japanese. I can't remember what my reaction was. I can guarantee you that I did not know what the final word on this one was. Spoilers for where I'm going with this point. I can't remember about this one, but they're difficult. They're unusual, right? You would not normally write chie this way, and I think one of the things that's supposed to get across to players is it's an unusual sort of knowledge that these madmen have access to. Right? It's not the form of chie that you would expect to see, and therefore it's elevated, it's fancy, right? It's hidden away, it's arcane, right? So just with the way that the Japanese is representing the word in Japanese for wisdom, or, well, wisdom as well, but knowledge, it's letting players know that it's not ordinary knowledge. And then you come down here, and it's the exact same thing with wisdom, right? This is Joisha no Eichi, and Eichi means wisdom. And you can represent it with much more recognizable kanji. And like I said, like, I needed to look this up when I was doing Translation Born to be like, what are these two characters together, right? The chi, I think, is the same, right? You see chie, and then you see Eichi, right? So that much of it is associated with knowledge, right? So you can sort of form a little bit of a connection there. But the A in Eichi, I've like that kanji, I had never seen that before until I started looking at this specific item in Bloodborne, right? So it's unusual. So we're once again seeing that the wisdom of the great ones, of the Joisha, the higher rank ones, if we're being super literal. I don't see why we should. I think great ones is just a better version of higher rank ones, so I'm just going to stick with great ones. But you can see that the wisdom of those great ones is on a different level just from the way it's represented in writing in Japanese. And that's something you really can't do with English. And it can be kind of frustrating. There are these certain ways that Japanese is able to use its writing system to convey certain ideas that don't really come through in translation. And it's a good example of how translation, I've heard it described as a lossy process, right? There's just fundamentally certain things that are going to get lost in translation. And so you need to try and look for ways to sort of reinsert those sorts of ideas when you're translating so that you can convey them maybe in an alternative way rather than losing them entirely, ideally. Sometimes you just can't, but it's good to try. And that's the sort of thing. And I've also talked about gains in translation, right? There are some concepts that, like runes, that they would try to express in Japanese, and they come across as like letters. Now, granted, there is that distinction that I discovered in this playthrough between like rune in katakana and I can't remember if it's moji or just ji, but letters in the like carol runes. Right? There is a little bit of a distinction in Japanese, whereas in English they're both called runes. But the translation of rune itself, right? There's a whole history of Norse runes and runes being associated with magic and magic symbols in the English-speaking world that the Japanese-speaking world, right? It's not quite as strong of an association, I don't think. And then you get things like visceral attack, right? There are certain things where the translators just knocked it out of the park, right? They found ways to communicate ideas that I think are stronger than the Japanese. Which is amazing. But then you've also got these things where it's like you just can't. Like you could use a fancier word for wisdom, but it's not the same effect, right? It's not like because literally eichi is just the same vocabulary term, but it's being represented with different kanji, right? So I mean, you could write it in all caps, right? There's only so much you can do in terms of lettering in English that would get across the idea that this is an arcane special type of wisdom of the great ones. Right? It sort of helps reinforce in Japanese that these are beings that are thinking on higher planes, which we'll get to by the end of this description. Speaking of which, I should probably stop talking about the title. I think I've made that point more thoroughly than I needed to. Let's move on. Okay, so the first line here, we have sort of an important bit of lore building, like world building verification about the Great Ones, at least at this stage. Because I think if you play the game long enough, you sort of you're able to understand this yourself. But at this stage, and you're still like, what are the Great Ones? What does it mean to ascend? What's going on here, right? You have various beings, right? And like moro, like it's a variety, right? It's not just one type, right? Various beings. So we're getting confirmation that there is a plural, right? There's more than one Great One, and there's also more than one type of Great One. They're not all the same, right? So it's neither the fact that Great Ones are singular, right? There's more than one Great One. And also, Great Ones are of different varieties, which is important. And again, you see that if you just keep playing the game long enough, but it's nice to get this like in text at this point. Also very appropriate for something that's Great One's wisdom, right? Because it brings you closer to an understanding of the Great Ones. That's kind of cool. Anyway, various beings which are called Great Ones. The other thing that I think is important about this first line is that they're called Great Ones, right? It's not saying that they are Great Ones. Maybe the Great Ones themselves, how do they conceive of themselves, right? Do they conceive of themselves as greater? Maybe they conceive of themselves as normal and other beings as lesser. Maybe they don't concern themselves with other beings like us. Well, actually, we know they do concern themselves with other beings like us, but we don't necessarily know that they hold themselves superior. It's not a title they gave themselves, and I'm not entirely sure what to do with that, but it seems like an important distinction that's being made here, right? The various beings that are called Great Ones. Right, and then we move on to the second line, and we get, so this is in two parts. I'm going to focus on the first part first, even though if we were going to translate the line as a whole, it might make more sense to like put them all together, because it's interesting, right? They who are close to gods, right? So we're getting further confirmation that there's more than one Great One. And then we're also finding that they're close to gods. And I think that's sort of an interesting way of tying back to the idea that they're called Great Ones. They're also called gods. But the description writer is, again, making this distinction. They're close to gods, right? It puts whoever wrote this description, right? There's never any real, like, in-universe explanation for who's writing these descriptions, right? You just have to go with the idea that they're authoritative, because if you start to question them, everything falls apart. So you just sort of need to accept on some level that the developers are meaning for you to get this information. But whatever perspective is being spoken from here, if we take it as authoritative, it's essentially saying the Great Ones are not gods. They're close to gods, but they're not. Right? And I'm using the plural gods because, again, we know that it's a plural for Great Ones. So it makes sense that we would tie it, right? They are beings that are close to gods, but they're not actually gods, right? And sort of underscores how people don't really understand them. They don't really understand their nature, because we've had people who sort of interact with the Great Ones as if they're interacting with gods, but that's not really what's going on, right? The Tomb of the Gods, right? The Chalice Dungeons, right? They're places where, like, Great Ones are enshrined, essentially, in, like, funerary practices, maybe. Maybe that's why that's called the Tomb of the Gods, right? There has to be some amount of speculation there, even though I'm pretty sure that's what's going on with them. Because it's never, I don't think, fully spelled out. But they're not really gods, even though they get regarded as such. So if you take that sort of same information, right, you can say we can't entirely trust them being identified as gods, because this description is telling us they're close to gods without being them. Can we really trust that they're actually beings of higher rank, right? If we talk about literal higher rank ones, right? Are they truly greater, right? We've got this label of Great Ones. How accurate is that? How much can we trust it if we are calling them gods and they're not, even if they're close to being gods? I don't know, introducing lots of ambiguity. This is Bloodborne. There's ambiguity everywhere. No shortage of that. Anyway, I bring up that little fragment of a sentence because I think that's interesting. It has some, like, potentially interesting implications. But it's all part of the entire line, right? Where you have this idea that this is a fragment of their lost knowledge, right? Fragment of lost knowledge of them who are close to gods. If you get a fairly literal version of that whole second line there, right? So there are beings that are close to gods, and this is a fragment of their lost wisdom. Interesting that they lose wisdom, right? Or maybe it's a fragment of lost wisdom that they have that is otherwise lost, right? They know some secrets that have otherwise fallen out of the world, but that they still know. I don't think the grammar is clear enough for me to say which one it is, right? It could be fragments of the Great One's lost knowledge, or it could be fragments of lost knowledge and they still know it, right? Because they're close to gods and they have a great amount of wisdom. I sort of like that second interpretation better because it makes more sense to me, but I'm not entirely sure it's grammatically justified. Anyway, I'm not going to hash that out right now. I'm going to continue with the description. Third line is very straightforward, thankfully. No ambiguity here, right? By means of use, gain much, well, literally it's enlightenment, but it's translated as insight, right? So use to gain a greater amount of insight. And of course, we have madman's knowledge. We've already gotten this sort of visual information, right? The second line, by means of use, gain insight or enlightenment. And third line here, by means of use, gain more insight, right? So if the visual wasn't enough for you, this is spelling it out. You get more insight from the Great One's wisdom, this fragment of lost knowledge from the Great Ones, than you get from the madman's knowledge, who may have touched some arcane secrets of the universe, but it drove them insane, and it didn't take much to blow their minds, whereas the Great Ones have a higher sort of mental capacity. So that's why also you can see wisdom as opposed to knowledge. Interesting distinction there. Anyway, final set of lines here. Once, Willem of Bergenworth proclaimed. And then the final line you can see is in Japanese quotation marks. That's going to be the proclamation, right? That's going to be what Willem of Bergenworth said at one time in the past. So let's go ahead and translate that. This is interesting. So we are too low in our dimension of thought. The dimension, I want to say the dimension of our thoughts is too low, but I'm not entirely sure if that's grammatically accurate, because wada is being identified as the subject. So we, and then presumably are, but then it ends in like too low. And then that's modifying, right, the dimension of thought, right? So the dimension of our thoughts is too low. I think it's, in terms of the overall idea, I think that's a reasonable thing to say. That's the first sentence, the first essentially half of that final Japanese phrase there. And then final thing there, more eyes are necessary. I mean, what we need are more eyes, right? I think the official translation is something like, we are thinking on the basis of planes, what we need are more eyes. Beautifully put, great summation of the idea as far as I'm concerned. But I just wanted to provide a somewhat more literal alternative so you can sort of see where that's coming from, right? But this is aligning Willem, as we've sort of seen before. He's not a fan of the blood. And he ran into Ebrietas, maybe, right? This is my interpretation. I don't want to get too carried away and start calling this out as fact. In an exploration of the Chalice Dungeons, and was like, this being is on like a higher level than us, and so we need to elevate our thoughts. I can't remember, like, clearly this isn't directly talking about elevating our thoughts in the Japanese here, but you sort of get that implication because our thinking is happening on a dimension that is too low. So what's the solution, right? We need to get our thinking on a dimension that's higher, right? We need to raise the dimension of our thinking, move it up to a higher plane. And how do we do that? By implication. Again, this is just purely by implication because we just have statement 1, right? The dimension of our thinking is too low. Statement 2, we need more eyes. But it seems those two statements seems to be related, right? So it feels like it's safe to say the way of elevating our thoughts to that higher dimension involves more eyes. So that's clearly what Master Willem is interested in. And that's pretty much why, I think that's pretty much everything for this item description. That's why I wanted to cover it. So having done that, we can resume our journey through the Nightmare Frontier, where I'm going to take a different approach. Had enough thinking, had enough caution, had enough, careful reasoning. We're going to abandon all wisdom, not just the Great One's wisdom, and I'm just going to rush. I'm going to make a run straight for that Winter Lantern, and we're going to see if we can just dash our way through the swamp at high speed. Because I would really like to not have to, go slow and kill all these enemies again. I would rather just make a beeline. All right, we'll just slip past you. Thank you. Okay. And keep going here. Keep going. Where is the... Okay, it's by where the item is. There's the little break in the rocks that allows me to come down this way. And don't want to get hit by any rocks that are being thrown by any giants. Gotta keep moving. Okay, I'm gonna start running. Oh, my stamina's getting a bit low here. So maybe I'll go back to rolling. Rolling, I think, is a little easier to keep up with some consistency. Because we have to get past all the rock-throwing giants. Yep, that includes you. And... excellent. I love the speed of that quick R1 there. Okay. And I think I'm just going to let the poison run down. And I've already got my weapon charged here for the eventual confrontation. How far out can I go? I feel like I've already gone too far. We'll find out. All right, now I want to heal up. All right, and I need to remember, after I get off my big hit, provided I can do it again. I don't know if I can do a repeat performance, but I'm going to try. And once that happens, I got to heal. And then maybe I can use a sedative. All right, I'm going to wait for you to start actually turning around. Good, actually turn around. Uh-oh, that wasn't actually turning around. Yes! All right, heal. No! No, don't jump on me. No! Ah, I was so close. I'm gonna get this. I like that I made the run. Okay, I thought I'd save you the run back, but I've done it. We're waiting for the winter lantern to slowly approach and actually turn around this time for real. And then we're going to strike again. And this time, we're going to make it work for real. Okay, that's the real turnaround. I got too obsessed with the idea of healing. Okay. Dang it. Okay, I got too obsessed with the idea of healing. Think I might actually have time to use a sedative. So that's what I'm going to try this time. Oh, I hope this works. I really hope this works, because I'm so close. Yeah, that's right. Come a little closer. Yep, now turn around. Oh, no, it has to reposition. Now it turns around. Okay. All right. Gotcha! Okay, nope, don't heal. Don't heal. Sedative. No! Why? Ah, the timing is so strange. Okay, I think the answer might be the gun. I'm just going to heal again so I can be at max HP. I think I'm going to have to take the frenzy hit, but then be able to attack with the gun. All right. A little further. You got the reposition thing coming up. Reposition that looks like you're turning around. All right, now actually turn around. Okay, here we go. That's it. That's it. Done. Please tell me. Ridiculous. I should have taken a sedative earlier. Whatever. I don't care. I don't care. I did it. I survived. Yes. Oh, I'm almost as happy as when I got off that blast attack the first time. Oh, amazing. Okay, this is an important site. So if we look out here, it looks like there's all sorts of ships going out into the distance, right? It's like you can see the masts sticking up out of this sort of sea of clouds, and they've got flags that are waving on them. And in and of itself, there's only so much that you can make of this scene. But it's important to remember it, because this sort of impossibility, this like ship's graveyard almost, in the clouds of the Nightmare Frontier, where you can see mountains in the distance in a way that doesn't really make sense, right? And we can look down, and we can see that this land is sort of floating in nothingness itself. Maybe this is the nightmare. Maybe the reason it's the Nightmare Frontier. Remember all I was saying about how maybe there's multiple nightmares, maybe there's one nightmare? Maybe there's one nightmare space, and it is vast. And it is so vast that new realms within this same nightmare can form. And impossible things can form out of it, right? You have these impossible landscapes with these mountains in the distance and these ships in the near term and this nothingness underneath the Nightmare Frontier. Maybe. And we'll be able to make some observations. The thing we can't see the Hunter's Dream. And, you know, it was pointed out to me in the comments that maybe the Hunter's Dream isn't actually a nightmare realm. I think it is, right? I think there's enough information in the Japanese and enough logic that you can see to the Hunter's Dream being a nightmare realm that I'm convinced of that pretty thoroughly. I'm still of two minds on the idea of whether there's multiple nightmares or there is the nightmare with different sort of realms inside of it, different formations. And there seems to be some sort of verticality happening that's also at play. This sort of thing gets accentuated to a certain extent by the DLC. Also of note, the fact that these are ships which have to do with the sea, right? Remember, large bodies of water serve as a bulwark guarding sleep. And this is a nightmare. Are we looking out at a stretch of water that is serving as a bulwark, a cloudy bulwark between here and the rest of some reality? I don't know. Could tie in with things that have to do with the DLC. I've been trying not to dwell too much on the information that we get from the DLC, just because Oh, and I was right. There is something down here that we can fall down to. I've been trying to avoid talking too much about the DLC because this is version 1.00. The DLC doesn't exist in this version of the game. And the DLC sort of changes the game and your understanding of it over time. But, you know, at the same time, it seems like a lot of ideas from the DLC are meant to be carried forward into this. So, that's scary. So it's a little bit difficult to know how much to talk or not talk about things related to the DLC in this playthrough. Ooh, those were bloodstone chunks. That's an important drop. I can now upgrade one of my weapons to the next tier of upgrade. Good stuff in the Nightmare Frontier, right? You put up with all that madness, right? All the horror of confronting that Winter Lantern in this particular place. You get to the second half, sort of the Nightmare Frontier, and boy, do you get rewarded. So, definitely worth it for those bloodstone chunks. Anyway, let's continue to make our way across here. What's down this way? It seems to be a hole. Okay, keep that in mind. You definitely don't want to fall down that hole, if you can avoid it. Alright. And you, friend, ran the wrong way. I guess it didn't want to run off the edge. Kind of funny. Alright, is this where I was before? I always end up getting a little bit lost in the Nightmare Frontier. Oh, it's different. Look at that. Lead elixirs. Very cool. In the English version of that item description, it makes sense that they'd be found in a desperate nightmare like this. But in the Japanese version, nightmarish despair, not desperate nightmare. So, I don't know. Doesn't make quite as much sense. Okay, and this I think is interesting, right? We have this, this is Poison Swamp number 2, section of Poison Swamp number 3. I consider, like, under that particular, I don't know, rock formation, you get into these, like, cave tunnels over there. I consider that to be, like, Nightmare Swamp section 4, even though, really, there's only sort of 2 of these expansive swamps. Anyway, we're going to ignore most of what's going on down here for the time being, because I want to, before I do anything else, I want to activate a shortcut that is going to be a huge quality of life improvement for the future. Because all the miserable stuff that can happen to you in this part of the Nightmare Frontier, it's hard to even get back to if you don't move ahead to activate the shortcut up ahead. Ooh, blood vials. I haven't gotten those in a long time. Thank you for jumping down to join the fray. It allowed me to one-shot you. That's fun. Okay, I always feel like there's something out at, like, the edge here, and there never is. Anyway. Just go a little bit further up here. And pretty soon, things will start to look familiar. This is strange, right? Like, what is this weird architecture? You can see all these, like, strange flowing lines. Nothing here is straight. It doesn't really seem like most of the Nightmare Frontier has been natural rock. This is worked stone. You have this thing, you have these candles, right? Shedding this yellow light draws your attention to it as a player, but it also, like, gives an arcane feel to what is clearly a set of technology, right? It's a nightmare elevator in a way that is powered sort of differently than you might expect. It's got this weird, like, archway? I don't know. And I don't really, like, is that a bird? I don't know. This is why we're getting back to the area where I feel not very confident at all, which is visual analysis. So I'm not going to dwell too much on that, except to say that I do think it's nice that they give us that differentiation between what you can see in the Nightmare Frontier as, like, the wilderness, and what you can see in the Nightmare Frontier as not the wilderness, right? As worked stone, as, like, evidence of some sort of thing. And you can see over here, right? There's this tall building. Why is there this giant, like, actual tower seemingly constructed out of stone amidst this pile of gravestones, right? We walked over that pile of gravestones in the swamp. We can see, I love how much we can see, where, if you haven't realized, by the way, we're right by the lantern. I love how much you can see right at the start of this area, right? We can see this bridge that we can walk through. You can see the sort of roots of the Nightmare Realm. You can see the poison swamp, or at least part of it, before it goes into the cave, right? And then you can come over here, and in the distance, you can see that's a ship, right? I was talking about the ships. It's easiest to see it once you're at that other point, but you can see them right away, right? You can see that one has its, like, torn sail just spinning around and around and around. And you can see the masts sticking up, right? It's not quite as clear what they are, but they're there. And then there's this building. That right there is actually the boss arena. So it's extremely cool, I think, how much is just, like, right under your nose. It sort of fits the pattern that we've seen in Bloodborne a lot, which is they're okay giving you a lot of information that you don't have context for. And they confront you with the strangeness of what you see. And then as you continue to play, as you traverse the space, as you gain more knowledge, and you gain sort of mastery over the realms that you traverse, you come to realize what these things are. You're able to place them in their proper context. Right now that we have that elevator, we can easily get back here. We can get back to that poison swamp. We don't really know what's going on with the ships, but we've seen them before. We have a better idea what they are. Like, all of a sudden, everything sort of coalesces, and now your exploration has rewarded you with some amount of knowledge, not perfect knowledge, but some amount of knowledge of the unknown, of the inexplicable that you were confronted with before when you didn't have any context. I think it's an incredible style of storytelling that Bloodborne in particular excels in, right? This is something that, right, the Soulsborne games in general, like, have this sort of story where things might seem inexplicable and you have to, like, delve into item descriptions to figure out some of the logic and that's this and that sort of thing. Bloodborne, I think, confronts you more than any other Soulsborne game. I haven't played them all, right? I haven't played Elden Ring. I haven't played anything past Dark Souls 3. But I'm pretty confident I can say that Bloodborne is the Soulsborne game where they do this the most. And it's appropriate, right? Because it's a great way of representing to you the idea of Lovecraftian horror. They give you the, like, some of the truths of the world, not all, but some of the truths of the world before you can understand them. And then as you progress, you unlock that understanding through getting more context, right? And sometimes you get more context and you don't unlock understanding. And you're just like, well, now I see more of the picture, but I still don't understand. It's incredible. It's so, like, carefully controlled, carefully, like, placed. It's really cool. So, yeah, just sort of a running thing, right? Exploration of the unknown, one of the themes of the game, and Lovecraftian horror. I've talked about all these things before, and I think I'm just going to keep bringing it up because I just love how well they've executed on that idea. Anyway, I wanted to come back to Return to the Hunter's Dream because I want to change my rune setup a little bit, and then I will be back to take on the last portion, the final poison swamp. Okay, that was a quick trip to the dream. I bought some blood echoes. I changed my outfit, just so you're aware, because if we come over here, I think the hat will be emblematic of what happened with all of the gear. I went from the Tomb Prospector set, and you can see this one has higher slow poison resistance, 18 as opposed to 16. However, the frenzy resistance on this set is 4 as opposed to 14, right? So the Yharnam Hunter set, decent slow poison resist, not as good as the set that I was wearing, the Tomb Prospector set, but much better frenzy resistance. And I've also equipped a frenzy resistance rune. So if we come over to, where would we see? We want to go to runes, and we want to go to Deep Sea, right? We can see that I've added 200 to my frenzy resistance meter. So it should be harder to frenzy me at this point. And I'm doing that because, yes, we have another poison swamp to deal with, but also we have one last winter lantern to deal with, and I don't have any more sedatives. So this is going to be interesting. Okay, you going to drop anything for me? Not this time. All right, that's cool. I wonder... And the reason, by the way, I don't mind giving up a little of the slow poison resistance is you sort of, right, these swamps are so poisonous that even if you have a lot of resistance, you end up getting poisoned kind of no matter what. And I've got a gem on this weapon that has my HP continuing to recover, right? We have the quiet encouragement of the doll that is continuing to bolster my HP. And that's nice because when I take constant damage from poison, I'm also constantly healing, right? That's why the poison damage that I've been taking in this playthrough has been relatively self-contained. Not completely self-contained, because I've definitely been, right, like over time, I've definitely been taking a good amount of poison damage, right? Damage from the slow poison. But I have been relatively successful when it comes to mitigating it, right? It generally takes 2 full meters of poison before I start to, like, really feel like I need to heal. Which is not the case normally. So, I need to clear out this particular poison swamp. And hello there. I'm glad you're running this way. It would be inconvenient for me if you ran the other way. Oh, man. I was all excited after we got those bloodstone chunks. And now we're back to regular bloodstone shards, not even twin shards from the small ones. But that's okay, I suppose. I'm hearing more enemies scurrying about. Okay, I don't know how to get onto that island. Eventually we're going to have to go into the cave, and that's going to be painful. Okay. Oops. Okay. I definitely want to go up here. And where do I go from here? I gotta go up this way. Clearly. And then this way. Something's taking damage. I see you. Even though you're trying your best to blend into the background. I could jump? I feel like there's gotta be a better way than jumping, but we'll try it. I can't even actually jump. Alright, that's fine. We'll figure this out. Where does that connect to? Maybe I have to go around. Maybe there's a way if I come around to this other part of the swamp here. Where all these things are waiting to... Oh, it's another big one. Come back! Alright, well, I'm going to have to reset to get that thing because... those guys might be carrying bloodstone chunks. And if there's a possibility of that, I am definitely not going to want to overlook them. Okay, and I'm just going to wait to heal. Outside of the swamp here. Get the poison, because we're going to reset the game. So that I can get that giant wandering madness. I don't know if they have a different term for them or not. I've never really considered that. Anyway, I'll be back soon. The thing about the 2 winter lanterns that are in the swamp is that... Oh, yes! More bloodstone chunks. That was so worth it. But anyway, as I was saying, the thing about the ones that are in the swamp is that those particular winter lanterns are benefiting from the fact that poison is constantly chipping away at your HP. So when the frenzy goes on top of that and deals 70% of your health in one quick burst, like, it's just devastating. Oh, I heard more scurrying. Uh-oh. Well, I don't think it's worth resetting for that, I don't think. I don't think that one is worth resetting for. I suspect that's another diminutive one. Can't be certain. It's like somewhere up here, maybe? I don't know. Anyway. Maybe I'll try resetting the game some other time. Now, is there anything here? No. Maybe you can make that jump, and this is like an alternative way of getting to that particular point. Anyway, this is... I've put it off almost long enough here. It's almost time for us to go into that cave. Just want to deal with these creepy crawlies first. Oh, good. You did the sort of tantrum attack that allows you to move forward rapidly, which means I can separate you from your friend and kill you. Alright. Is that a big one or a small one? If it's a small one, I'd prefer to kill it first, because otherwise it's going to sort of hang back. Oh, come on. Okay. Okay, I can deal with that poison cloud that just is going the wrong way. Yep. Good, miss me. That's what I like to see. Oops, I thought I hit the button one more time. Clearly I did not. Okay. We're back. This is where things get interesting. This is where we have our final Winter Lantern to contend with our HP low and draining further. Is that another item? Oh, of course it is, because this is deeper into the cave. Alright. Something's dying of poison in here, which I am grateful for. It's not that. I wish that thing was dying. Is it? Is it dying of poison? Oh, that would be amazing. Oh, just die of poison, please. Is it something else? Can I lock on without taking frenzy damage? I need to heal. I hear you sing your song. Oh, please, please be getting poisoned. It looks like it's taking poison damage. Legendary. I didn't think they could take poison damage. Oh, is it just gonna die over there? I see the crawler. I just don't care. Yeah, okay, I get it. Hold on, I want to watch this. Aww. Alright, well, you can die. You're annoying. Aww. I was so hopeful. I was so hopeful. So, what happens, I was mentioning that hole earlier in this episode. You can actually fall down, and if you do, you'll be, like, right next to this thing. Now, how am I going to deal with it? Yeah, it's not getting poisoned. Oh, I had such high hopes. Oh, well. All right, I think I need to wait for this poison to wear off and then heal. Do I want to try one of these? I would love to get another blast attack in. I think I have a good idea of the timing for it, too. I also think it's facing away from me. It's hard to tell because they have eyes everywhere. Yes! Alright, I know you're alive. Die. I don't know why my frenzy didn't go up. It seems like it should have gone up. But I am not going to argue with that. It wasn't getting poisoned, but its frenzy turned off? I don't care. I don't... Oh, game error in my favor. Just beautiful. Alright, now we have all these passageways to figure out. This is another point where it's quite likely that I will get lost. But hopefully, if we're, like, consistent, right? So I'm going to start by following the right-hand path here. And there's nothing. Okay, good to know. And I'm going to slowly work my way to the left. Okay, yeah, I see you. You're so big that you block the passageway. You're very, very impressive. I'm going to rally back some health. Oop, I might die. Not quite. Okay, thank goodness. I do need to heal. I can't completely ignore the poison. All right, there we go. Good enough. Good enough. That was actually a more difficult situation than I gave it credit for. Is this the right way with nothing? I think that's the right way with nothing. I think this is forward. Sort of the left-hand path that I haven't explored. And, of course, there is something here. Ooh, here we go. I'm not going to read this now. That is the next level of Cold Blood. Level 10, right? Because as we know now, they go in threes, right? We have the droplets, and then we have the thick Cold Blood, and then we have the frenzied Cold Blood, the mad Cold Blood, and now we have the kin Cold Blood. But again, We'll get to that in another episode. Maybe the next one, when I'm not standing in a poison swamp. Okay, continuing to work my way to the left. Okay, I think I'm gonna sort of speed up here. Yep, sneak by you. I see that there's 2 of you. Please come this way. Okay, you're both doing poison gas attacks. That is not the sort of attack I wanted you to do, but I'm gonna make it work. I'm gonna get behind you. Okay, please die. Thank you. And there we go. Uh-oh. That's the tantrum. Okay. Gotcha. Excellent. Okay. Problem solved. This is going great. Oh, I was so worried about that winter lantern, and then it bugged out or something. Beautiful. Alright, and that is the great deep sea room. That is the big treasure, I think, from coming down here. Bolsters all of your defenses. Well, all of the deep sea defenses. There's also a Great Lake that bolsters all of your lake defenses. Alright, continuing to go left, and I think that's actually it. Because again, that was the big treasure. Okay, did I miss anything in the middle here? I don't think I did. And then we can come out here, and this is going to be back towards the entrance. Yep, we can see I already got that item. And we went over on the other side there to fight the winter lantern. Wow! Alright, this is going great. Okay. And I was sort of debating whether or not I wanted to fight the boss in this episode, but we've gone on for a fairly lengthy chunk of time here. So I think I'm going to hold off on that for now. I'd like to, get myself out of this maze. Here we go. Okay, and I think I actually want to head back to the dream. I'm not sure if I have the ability to level up or not, but I want to take stock, maybe replace my rune setup once again, get that figured out. So we'll do that. And I think the dream is generally a good place to go in between episodes. So we'll use that as an excuse to take a break. And, that way I won't have to bother wasting a blood vial to heal. Oh, yeah, no, I'm in no shape to fight. I'm down to 11 blood vials. So I'd have to go back to the dream no matter what. All right. Ooh. I have just overlooked that madman's knowledge for several episodes now. All the times I've been right here and ran straight past it. Well, I got it now. All right, we are making good progress here on the Nightmare Frontier, and I am hopeful that going forward, we will continue to make smooth progress. I would love for another sort of bug like that happened with the Winter Lantern to come and sort of help me out again, but we're not going to count on that. We'll see. We'll fight. We'll aim to finish off with the Nightmare Frontier next time. Until then, I'm going to call an end to my hunt for the evening, and I wish all of you good hunting.